Welcome to our podcast, The Words That Make Us.
Consider this time with us as your excuse to take a break from everything.
Every episode, we choose a word that makes us think, wonder, or dream. We read a range of texts that explore different aspects of this word.
And we let our thoughts wander. We hope that yours will too. So grab your favourite tea.
Or a beer.
And join me, Rama
And me, Tony Bailey. Let's go!
So today's episode is about football.
England!
So Tony, how was the game yesterday? I know you were so excited.
I've been through it. It's typical England, all these high hopes beforehand, it's going to be great. And then we were absolutely pants. And we were losing literally in the 5th minute of additional time. And then we score a goal, a miracle goal in the last second.
Wow.
And then it goes into extra time and England win. And we're through into the last 8.
So I really have a terrible question. Who were they playing against?
Who were they playing? Slovakia. The mighty Slovakia.
Once you struggled to win against Slovakia, no offence.
We would struggle to beat our school football team at the moment, honestly.
That's really terrible.
The thing that's really bad about it is that, I feel like I went through like the emotional wrangle, what's the right term?
The
roller coaster ride of emotions last night, which I can't compare to anything else.
Really?
I can't compare, even like, marital turmoil, birth of children. Yeah. There's nothing quite like...
I'd like to see you watch football one day and see how you react.
It's just a well-known fact that the behaviour of completely reasonable, sensible individuals honestly goes out of the window. How? As soon as,
But why is it? Were you drinking lots?
I didn't drink anything. I was too nervous to drink.
It always fascinated me, like how hooligans and stuff, when they do these things, I'm like, surely these are professionals that go to, they have jobs, they have families, they're normal people in their everyday life, and then all of a sudden they go off the rails completely when their team is playing.
Yeah, I mean, the hooliganism thing, thankfully it's not as big a problem now, although there is still some of it about. But it used to make me laugh, 5 England supporters were arrested because of violent. One, Jim Frobisher, an accountant from Epsom. Like
that's what I mean.
What?
What goes through their heads when they're doing things like that? Is it drinking or is it really just the adrenaline from the game?
I think there's so much more, which is why I know this would not have been your number one choice of podcast topics, but given that we've done shoes and hair, I felt that we should have.
That's exactly how, especially football. The cats, we did cats and you put up with it, so I was like, of course I'm going to do football.
I enjoyed it. It's your opportunity to get revenge. I think football's quite an interesting one, simply because if ever there could be a subject where we clearly come from different perspectives, I suspect this is the subject.
The thing is, like, for me, I really didn't have a perspective on football. For me, I couldn't care less. But then when you suggested it last time, I was like, oh my God. But I've chosen a lot of the topics and you've just gone with it. So I had to do this.
Yeah, but I'm interested because you said, football is a topic that you couldn't care less.
Yeah.
How is that possible? You see, for most men or boys, particularly of my era, you had to have a football team. And, if you didn't follow a football team, there was something a little bit
off about you.
Weird about you. So, it seems a really weird thing for me that you don't have that that thing inside.
I think for
somehow.
women it's different, So it's many factors actually go into this. Like the thing is, a lot of the thing about loving football is it's tied a little bit with, or not a little bit, a big bit with your national identity. And so for me growing up, Syria was never in any big thing.
No, they haven't won anything recently, have they? Yeah.
I don't remember them playing anything recently,
No.
but okay. And so it's like there's no need for me to be watching or cheering or anything like that. And also, actually, when I did some research about this, and I was really interested to see why men are more interested in football than women, and
why is that? Do you think?
So, well, according to this article that I found, they said that first of all, they talked about something like in the animal world, this thing about the male showing its plumage and this fighting or pretending to fight with other males while the females so there is this thing about being boisterous and being competitive and showing off and stuff. And for men, I think those who are playing, of course, this is it, but those who are watching, it's like kind of seeing yourself in their shoes, kind of like winning through your hero, basically, because they represent you. Whereas for women, I don't think they have this need to show off physical strength.
Interesting, because we've talked a little about Taylor Swift recently. And I sort of feel like the female equivalent of being a Manchester United supporter is being a Swiftie.
Yeah.
In that you get this sense of belonging, this sense of being part of something, and that person, Taylor Swift, somehow represents you and is your voice, and so you will pay ridiculous sums of money and travel to go and see her and buy her stuff. So I think that the same motivation is in there with women, but perhaps not to the nth degree.
I don't know. I feel like, okay, so for me personally, I don't identify with anybody like that. I'm not crazy about anyone. Like the only person, like if you invited me to go, I would maybe go to somebody's concert, but I would not pay crazy sums of money to go to see anyone. Yeah. So, but I know a lot of women are like that, so. And
I've got a friend who's a Rod Stewart fan.
Yeah.
And every tour she will go, and she will go to multiple concerts all around Europe. So probably more devoted to seeing Rod Stewart than
Does this
most
woman have
football
children?
supporters. No.
See? Because that's one of the things...
No,
see?
That's true.
Because that's one of the things that when I was reading about it, they were saying that it's a few things. First, it's this male need to compete and or watch competitions.
Yeah.
But there's also this thing about men having more time on their hands because they're not the main caregivers at home. They go to work, they come back there, they have a bit of time to, have a beer, watch a game. Whereas women are kind of on the whole time. And when they have time, this is what the article said, they do Pilates or yoga or they go for a walk with a friend. They don't have the luxury of having this extra time to sit down and watch.
It's interesting, isn't it? And I think it's also what people deem to be valuable to do with their spare time. Yeah. So I think a woman will see, I will go to a spin class or a yoga class because it's about me and myself, bettering myself or my own wellness. Yeah. Whereas a man, it's his one opportunity to go and bond with other men.
Yes, exactly. To bond with other men and also to let down his hair, metaphorically speaking. Yeah. Because men don't have this chance to be very emotional in everyday life.
If you think about the institutions that do attract men to other men, you're either going to be part of a biker gang where you're all dressed in your leathers and your lycra, your biker jackets and your long hair. Yeah. Well, also that's exactly. possibly true as well. So your music affiliations, or it's football. I mean, the bizarre thing about football is that I've watched football all my life since the age of 10, where I think my parents were happy to get rid of me, and I used to go to the local football team and watch them every week. But I've always been part of my life, and I've stood shoulder to shoulder with people from every possible social class and background.
And that is very nice, yes.
And we've hugged each other, jumped up and down together, shouted abuse at the police together, whatever it is. It's a sort of classless society, and maybe that's one of the attractions to it. Yeah. I mean, my reading about, why sort of brings this idea of football supporters or fandom providing a sense of community that most men don't have.
Exactly, and I think really a big part of it is them being allowed to have emotions, to have really strong emotions, because men usually have to be very stoic in life. We expect them to always be in charge and strong and everything. And now they can scream, they can let go, they can, and it's society approves of this kind of show of emotion, whereas other times they're not allowed to.
And men don't bond with or don't want a sense of community where they talk to each other about their intimate secrets, whereas I think women like to get together and talk.
They need
talk
it.
about
it's like therapy.
how they feel and whatever, whereas blokes just don't want to feel lonely, but they don't want to give too much away either. They don't want to be alienated. They want to be part of something, but without the same level of commitment that you need when you're in a personal relationship. So what better thing than to be in love with your football club?
Exactly.
Because then you can go and shout with people and then go home. You don't actually owe people anything. A sort of extension of self-identity.
But also, like you said, there's this bit about belonging and a community and everything. So if my Syrian team played, and especially that the Syrian team would be the underdog. So I would be very happy to support it, and not for the sake of football itself, but for the sake of this. Everybody would feel so proud, and I would need that, because everybody every Syrian person at the moment is kind of feeling dejected and nothing's going right.
Well, there was as we were recording this podcast, we're right in the middle of the European Championships 2024, and. It's an outburst of national pride, at least in its best form. In its worst form, sometimes it's an outburst of some national extremism, and you do get occasional events. But it is quite extraordinary. Here in Germany, we've got hundreds and thousands of people from different parts of the world celebrating their own nationality, and actually there hasn't been very much trouble. And when you think about the fact that there's a large amount of men involved and a large amount of alcohol as well, and the sun's been shining, that is a recipe for conflict.
I was worried.
It's quite amazing, really.
I really was worried the other day when I saw cars honking and they had the Turkish flag, and I was like, oh goodness, it's going to be a bit tricky, all of these people showing so much excitement about their country and their national pride, and somebody from Germany might say, hey, why don't you feel like you're German? Germany has given you so much and all of that. But no, actually, I've seen them being happy for them. Now, whether that would be the case if they played against each other would be a different story. But
that's another interesting thing, because you've mentioned national football, so supporting Syria.
Yeah.
And you're right, other countries would have sympathy and would be supporting Syria as the underdog against Italy or whoever.
Yeah.
But there's kind of two levels of football support as well. Because I support England, but not in the same way that I support my club.
Manchester.
So I support...
No.
When you say Manchester, that's Manchester United.
Manchester United, that's two different things.
It is, because there's Manchester City, who are now better than Manchester United. But,
it's Man United.
It's Manchester United.
Okay.
But anyway, that thing... So my national identity says England, and I don't have any choice over that. That's where I was born. I have to support England in a competition. And it's ridiculous. Normally, I'm completely, me, I'm very self-deprecating.
Very level-headed,
England is a bit of a laughing stock.
Joke.
But when I was watching that game last night, I literally was... You should have seen a video of me jumping off.
I really wish I could be
jumping off the sofa.
On the wall.
My daughter telling me to be quiet, to calm down. It's only a game. Don't worry, we can always switch it off, Papa. Anyway, it's clearly not understanding how important, but just enjoying wearing the shirt. So I have to support England, and I'll get very excited just once every couple of years when there's a tournament. But my club, Manchester United, no choice about that, because that's a family thing. So not about where I was born, but the family that I'm born into.
So everybody in your family supports the same club?
Well... My father's there's a couple of traitors. I'll name you on this paper. So my father was a Manchester United supporter, and there was no choice. I was always going to be a Manchester United supporter, and if I'd have turned against them, that would have been very upsetting. For my father. Although my brother did. Yeah, I think he just wanted to be different and ended up with a Leeds United shirt, which was absolute sacrilege at the time. Interestingly, if you said to me, Tony, you've got to get a tattoo.
Yeah, that would be the only thing.
I haven't got a tattoo. The only thing that I could think of, aside from putting the names of my children on my arm, which always seems a bit silly.
It
really.
is, yeah.
The only thing
would be
Manchester United.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
I can't
there's a good
imagine
story
doing it
about
anyway.
a person who was a Wolverhampton Wanderers supporter, had a tattoo on his bottom, on each bottom cheek, W for Wolverhampton, and on the other Wanderers, W for Wanderers.
Oh, yeah.
And when he bent down to show his wife, she said, "Wow." There you go. Anyway, the downside of... I didn't think I'd get that joke into this podcast, but I did. Anyway, it was quite good.
Oh, Tony.
The downside of this need for belonging and it's sort of being a source of community, etc., is that those fans who've got some kind of impaired social functioning, this is a catalyst for confrontational behaviour, for anger, for complaining, and
outlet.
then into violence. So when they talk about football hooliganism, it's kind of a reflection of that sort of masculine character, and there is a certain percentage who can't control their emotions. And when it overspills, then people get really annoyed and dysfunctional. Increased negative emotions following loss, anger, humiliation in a game, resentment.
And that's why you find it manifests really badly in countries which are not doing well. You know, like economically speaking, or in other ways. If they're not doing well, then it really manifests in an ugly manner. And so I was reading about, I think it's Brazil and Argentina, but I'm not sure, like South American countries where it becomes really, really dangerous, and there are casualties every year. Like people die.
Yes, indeed, yeah. I read an article about the world's 10 most dangerous fan bases. I've noticed in Germany, every club has this group of supporters who are usually called the ultras.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've seen that with graffiti, but, you know...
I've seen the ultras, but I don't
the
really know.
ultras. And these are usually the fan base who are on that grey line between their love of their sport, but also into violence and the club rivalry becoming almost like gang warfare.
That's not good.
Apparently, I did the Bleacher Report is a website, and it did a top 10 of the most dangerous fan bases in the world.
How many of them are South American?
Let's have a look. Half, I'd say.
Wow.
Actually, yeah, indeed.
And how many
Number one is Wisla Krakow in Poland, where I was this weekend, funnily enough. Poland, apparently, country plagued by football hooliganism and thuggish fans, and Wisla Krakow have a major following of poorly behaved fans. Apparently, a famous footballer, Dino Baggio, Italian footballer, was stabbed in the head.
Oh, goodness.
From a knife thrown by Wisla supporters in 1999. And in 2003, Wisla hooligans were part of a 5-club brawl. So supporters from 5 different football teams in Poland had a brawl in Wrocław, Poland. The annual game between Krakow and MKS Cracovia, like a local rivalry, there is almost a guarantee of casualties or deaths, as fans are always involved in deadly fights. The 2006 version of this game saw 8 people killed in a hooligan battle in the city. I mean, this is terrible.
This is really, really bad. It's supposed to be fun.
I mean, can you think of any other supposedly recreational activity?
Bullfighting.
Well, I suppose it's kind of part of the jeopardy of that sport is you might get killed while you're doing it.
It really shouldn't be.
I mean, riding a motorbike and going over the top of 10 double-decker buses is dangerous, but going to a football game shouldn't be.
Yeah, it really should be that you go there, you have a good time, and you should be expected home at dinner. And to go to a football game and never come back is just ludicrous.
Well, when I used to football, used to have a season ticket at Manchester United. I used to go to all the games.
Wow.
And this is despite the fact that I wasn't living in Manchester at the time.
Wow.
I used to travel up.
Now that is dedication.
That's how much it was, right? That really meant a lot to me. So I also followed a lot of the games away from home. And honestly, at times it was terrifying.
Really?
Because you're under police escort most of the time. You're having objects thrown at you by other clubs. I went to one game on a cold, wet night in Leeds. Leeds United is a big, quite a hostile rival of Manchester United. And 15 minutes before the end of the game, the tannoy says, would all Manchester United supporters stay in their section of the ground whilst the rest of the ground is being cleared. So you're locked in this stadium. And what that actually means is, another way of saying that message is, Manchester United supporters, please stay in your section of the ground for 15 minutes so that all the Leeds fans can gather outside your exit so that and when you come out, you're going to get a good thumping.
What?
And I came out of the ground there with my wife and we had to run.
Because
Why
would they do that?
Because that's what happened
what?
At that point. Thankfully, things are not quite so bad as they were then.
I can't imagine this. It's really, I'm sorry, this is really
it's
crazy.
true. It's true. Absolutely true. I went away to Wolverhampton Wanderers, the guy with the tattoo.
With the wow.
I went with my two good friends. Yeah. We were following another team, not Manchester United, to the ground. And as we were walking to the ground, this bloke sees the three of us walking up, and we're obviously away supporters. And he just walked over and absolutely punched my friend in the face.
What?
No provocation. We were just walking to the game. He absolutely flattened him and carried on walking. It was like, what did he do that for? It was crazy. But, that's how it was.
But it's better now? Things like that don't happen?
I think not. And part of that is because of the way that football has changed and is much more commercialised, much more expensive to get into a ground. It's much more of a family entertainment now.
Okay, that's good.
So that's good. And indeed, the number of women attending football now has changed. Because when I was a kid, if women went to the game, there was something a bit strange about them. I always thought it was super cool if you were female. Your girlfriend goes to the football. She's so cool. Whereas now, at least families go. Women, if you look at the profile of match goers, I think the share now is something like 38 to 40% of supporters are now female in the ground.
Okay.
Which is much
nice.
better, isn't it? Also, the ages of people going to football games has changed. So in the 90s, early 90s, perhaps when violence and hooliganism were particularly bad.
Mostly 20s and 30s.
It was. Age 15 to 34, 54% of the supporters. And only 16% were the older generation like me, age 55 plus. Whereas now, only about 35% are aged under 34. They're eking out their violence on video games.
So in a way that's positive. Something positive to say for computer games.
Yeah. Whereas the older generation now, 30% of the crowd are age 55 plus. I think it's also to do with the admission prices. So
I think that's good. So in a way, football, FIFA being greedy and all of the football clubs being greedy has some good sides to it.
Also, if you look at who's watching football on the telly, so in 1992, about just under 30% of people watching, is that right? About 20% of people watching television, football and television were women, whereas now it's about 35%. So women are accessing the game, and that it has its obviously positive impact.
Yeah, that is good. I mean, let women do something and they will make it better.
Yes.
Let me just say that.
How do you feel about the rise of women's football? Because there was a women's World Cup and women professional game.
So
do you
I don't follow it
support
at
that,
all.
or?
I'm not a football person. I don't know much about football. I find the wages that are paid and the contracts and all of that a little bit like the actors and how much they are paid. You know, I find that exaggerated. So I stay away from. And also, I didn't grow up with football, so it doesn't mean much to me. But I am very happy to see women's football on the rise. It's really good. I'm not really a feminist, but I'm happy to see women going there. And actually, apparently now women's football is raising more money than men's. Could that be? No,
but it's growing at a more
I think in 1 year
rate.
it was like that. I looked it up anyway. But what I also like as well is that most of the people watching women's games are actually men. So in Germany that was the case. It was male viewers supporting the games, and they're working towards bridging the pay gap, which is also really cool.
I think it's quite a big debating in footballing circles. What's really good is that all of the bigger clubs now have a women's division or women's section, and it's great when Man United women's team host games at the main stadium and get a big crowd, and that's really great to see.
It is really great, and I'm sure that they play less aggressively. I mean, they can be aggressive women,
the thing is that again, there's a lot of talk about it shouldn't be called women's football. It should be called football, because football that women play. However, when you do watch it, it is different.
Yeah, of course it is.
It doesn't mean it's worse or better. It's just different because the physical attributes, the size, just makes it different. It isn't as physical. There's some great skill in it. It's plenty of passion, determination, and some great goals. But it's not the same as men's football.
And I'm happy to hear that, because I don't want women to think that if they're moving into like a quote-unquote male-dominated sport that they have to behave like men, because actually I don't approve of that behavior.
No, it's like other sports. Men and women's tennis is different. The length of the game is different, but also the style. Men play 5 sets, women play 3.
Oh.
But
why? Do they think that women have less stamina?
I think that's,
the case?
I think that is the case. I don't think, in some tournaments men play 3 as well, but for the big tournaments it's 5. But the style of the game is very much geared towards the strengths and weaknesses of your physical demeanour. So I don't see why we should be pushing for women's tennis to become like men's, because it's not the same. I enjoy watching both.
I mean, we do. It's very interesting because we have sports day here at school, and almost every year there's this debate from some teachers who are like, why are we separating boys and girls? They should be playing on the same team. And I'm like, actually that's not really fair. It's like when you're saying like I'm not going to go there. But anyway, I don't think that boys and girls, maybe boys and girls are okay, but like when they become professionals and this becomes their main job and men become super strong and super muscular, it's not fair to let them play against women, because just nature means that they're not the same height, the same weight, the same... Yeah,
and rather than seeing it as an issue about being woke or it's about allowing people to compete in their sport.
And to be, exactly. And to have it being fair. Like, I wouldn't want to compete against a man that's actually not fair to me, because he's taller and he's stronger and he's faster.
Well, I know because I try and coach football.
Yeah.
That it is not right for me as a person of my age to believe that I can compete on a level playing field with kids who are full of beans and energy and 16, can run around. 17, it's the same thing, really. I think there's an awful lot of noise being made here where it's not required.
A very fit woman can beat an unfit or normal average guy anytime. But a very fit woman and a very fit man is just not fair.
The American football team, women's football team, played a competitive match as part of their training against one of the club side's youth men's team, and were absolutely hammered.
Were they? That's good. It's good to tame their ego as well.
Well, I think for them it was a good training thing. But for those, often you see this has become a political thing, and you see people having a debate about what the remuneration should be in the sport and how it should be on a level playing field, etc., without knowing the facts of the matter. So, for example, if you look at women's football versus men's football, same as basketball or whatever, the revenue that is in the men's game means that you can afford to pay your top players, like your Messis and Ronaldos, very huge salaries, because they're kind of earning it because they're bringing in these massive television revenues, sponsorship deals. In women's football, it just wouldn't make sense to try and pay them because the game can't afford it. It's not got the revenue coming in, and that will happen as the level of support, the level of sponsorship. The acid test. I remember seeing somebody on a sports program saying, "You're complaining about remuneration. Do you go every week to support your local ladies team?"
No, you don't.
Well, then,
that's
why
exactly.
are you
You're not
complaining?
paying for it, so how will they be paid? But I found this CNN article, and there's a bit that I would like to read to you because I found it very interesting. So, according to CNN analysis of Canada's soccer financial accounts, the federation spent more than double on men's national soccer teams, $11 million, in 2021, than on women's teams, $5.1 million. And in 2022, when the men's team qualified for the World Cup for the first time since 1986 and was eliminated in the group stages, Canada Soccer spent even more, $19.5 million, on men's national teams of all ages. The women's national team qualified for the World Cup too, but their teams only got $14 million. So it's like we're talking about a better team here, that qualified more easily, and it's still paid a lot less.
So,
or spent on, how are they going to become better if you don't fund them?
I think the answer's got to be somewhere in the middle. I mean, I think also if you're talking about national teams, so being paid to play for your country, always seems a bit weird to me that you shouldn't have to be paid to play for your country. It should be something
but you need
do.
to be paid.
So I can see why for the national teams the pay should be similar. But I'll give you a counter to that. So if you look at the soccer clubs around the world with the highest revenue, and we're talking about the men's teams now. So if we take Real Madrid, biggest club in the world, they had a revenue last year of 831 million euros. Fourth on the list is Barcelona, 800 million euros in revenue. Okay, so that's the men's team. The women's team, Barcelona, were top. Their revenue for the same year was 13 million.
What? From 800 to 13 million?
800 million, that's the shirt sales, that's all of the revenue that Barcelona are earning from the men's part of the team. 13 million. So if you said, well, the players on the men's team should be paid the same as the women's team.
No, it's not fair.
Then it just wouldn't be viable for them either way. They'd never attract players to the men's club if they were paying the women's wages, and they could never afford to pay the women the men's wages. And it would create a balance in the women's game that would be completely unrealistic.
I agree. I agree. I just think that they should try to spend similar kinds of, have the same budget almost, to give them a fair chance to also put on an amazing game.
I tell you what I think is that rather than putting the focus on what people are earning, sort of on the outcomes, we should be focusing on developing the game so that I would love it to be the case that the Women's Premier League has the same crowds, has the same money in it, has the same global superstars as the men's game. That's ideal. But what I don't think you can do is dismantle the men's game in order to make it fair,
and I think
or vice versa.
Exactly. That's the problem with feminism, is that it seems like some feminists need to put down boys to raise girls, and it shouldn't be like that. It should be we're treating them the same, and we're trying to raise them both.
Yes. I mean, if we go with the statistic we said before, so again, share of soccer fans worldwide, by gender. So 37% of people who are, quote, soccer fans are female. 37%. So shouldn't the end game be that if it stays at 37%, 37% of the revenue in football should be being generated in women's football.
Yeah.
But it's not.
No.
It's not. This is not how it is right now. Have we got anything to read?
I've got to actually, because it goes really...
That was a good challenge. When we said football, I didn't really think that through. And I thought, could be difficult to find something from the Quran or the Bible.
That's exactly it. I mean, I didn't even bother to look. I'm sure there was nothing.
Jesus
even
played. He was in the centre of three at the back.
Watermelons or something they're playing with. Nothing. There was nothing of the sort. So,
Yeah.
of course, I struggled to find anything in Arabic literature or in the Quran or Sufism. There was none of that. But I did find a really cool poem by Carol Ann Duffy, and we did have a poem.
I love Carol Ann
She's
Duffy.
awesome. And so her poem is called We See You.
Yeah.
That rain-heavy leather ball your left foot smashed a century ago has reached us here, and so we see you, Lily Parr, in hindsight's extra time, linked to our female family chain of passing forwards, to Mary Phillip, first black captain of the Pride, Katie Chapman, Carol Telford, Millie Bright. We see you too, Pat Dunn. You blew your whistle and the game kicked off for women referees. Red card for misogyny. Free kick for progress. We're all on side. Team sheets are the dreams of managers. Shout out the golden days of Emma Hayes, which make us visible to 30, 40, 50,000 fans. So good, so good, so good. From grassroots team to league to Euros to the world. Now, women's voices, Amy Aluko, Karen Carney, tell the poetry of play. We'll find you, 10 years old, girl with ball, incredible to be you. So here's our team talk. We're right behind you and we see you.
Yeah, that's terrific. So I don't know, given your knowledge of football, whether you get all the references in there.
I did look up quite a few of them. I was amazed to know that this lady Lily Parr played football 100 years ago.
Yeah. The history of the game is really interesting, and women's part in it is often downplayed.
Overlooked, exactly.
But this was written, and all the references here are, England have been very successful in the women's game.
Yeah.
And won the Women's European Championships. So these characters, it's been tremendous to see girls wearing football shirts with their own heroes' names on the back, and that's great.
I love that.
It's
I love
really
that.
Kick-started the game in England.
And even though I, as a female, never liked football, but I do love that if a girl loves football, she has a chance to play it and to be brilliant and to be seen, like Carol Ann Duffy said. And I really, really like that. So it's cool.
Can I read you? So I see what you think about this poem, because this poem is also about girls playing soccer, but it was written in about 1970.
Okay.
Right.
So it was supposed to be open-minded, but for the time it was.
So because I read this and it made me laugh because it is so of its time.
Yeah.
And compared to the Carol Ann Duffy one, which is all about the power, is the power of women making the sport their own and inspiring new generations of girls to play football. This poem's written by a woman, which again surprised me. But anyway, it's called Soccer Girl.
Okay.
As you can tell, I think that means it must be American as well.
Yeah,
which might
from
also
soccer,
change it.
yeah.
She gets out there and hustles. She does her very best. It's all about the teamwork, and winning is her quest. Pretty as a picture, she could be most anything, but for now she's chosen soccer and working hard for her team. Ponytail is flying, the ball is flying too. She's got those rules down good, and she knows just what to do. So come on, folks, and watch the game if you want to see the best. A girl who could be a beauty queen, but soccer is her quest.
I know why you don't like it, because like, why are we objectifying women and talking about their beauty?
And it's also an insult to football. I mean, because the whole thing is insulting.
Why?
Well, the game is the game.
Yeah.
And I think it's insulting to women that it should be an issue that she could be a beauty queen or not.
Yeah. So it's objectifying women and looking at their looks.
But also, from a footballing perspective, it's like, why are you making a big deal about this?
I mean,
if a girl wants to play football, get stuck in and play football, and it's not worthy of comment anymore, I don't think.
I mean, I don't find it offensive in that manner. Are you saying that football shouldn't be seen as kind of like, but like she could have been a great thing, a beauty queen, and now she's settling for football? Or not? That's not how you're looking at it.
I think when this was written in the 1970s, it was probably something that was worthy of a remark about, look at her, she's so talented. Yeah. And look at her, she's so beautiful. She's got a lovely ponytail, but she's chosen football. Like now, and why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you choose to play football as well as being pretty and as well as being clever and anything? It's just another thing you do. I mean, it's not. Given
that, this is many years later, yes, I see your point. But at the same time, I do think for that time, I really like this poem, to be honest with you. I also like that she's kind of telling girls, because until today, women worry about, I don't want to exercise too much and put on muscle, because I'll be, masculine and stuff. And I really like when women are strong but feminine at the same time. And I think this is what she's trying to say. It's like, you can be feminine, you can be a beauty queen, and you can be very good at sports and, be on the field. And I like it.
I like the way that women have made that transition into professional sport in such a good way, so that they can still be glamorous off the field. They can still be glamorous, and still be pretty, or whatever the right word is, but they can still be extremely strong, aggressive, sporty, etc.
A force to reckon with. I really like that.
And actually, as a man, it means I don't feel quite so creepy about watching that game. Yeah. When a man says, I really like watching the women doing gymnastics, you think, you sort of, really? Why might that be? And I think a few years, I think in the past, if you said, I regularly watch the girls playing football, people, why is that then, Tony? Whereas now, you watch it because it's really good. It's
a really interesting game to watch.
And it has characters in there.
And skill, and they know what they're doing.
And I have to be completely honest. There are some sports where, you watch, what is it about beach volleyball, women's beach volleyball that I like? I can't quite put my finger on it.
Can't be the curve.
Yeah. But with women's football now, no, I like it because I know the players, I know what they're strong at, what they're good at, and it's developing into the same sort of thing as men's football. I think that's really good.
And I salute the older generation 100 years ago who paved the way for the girls today to be seen as very worthy players who can be watched by anyone.
Well, you've probably done some research about the history of the game, but from my sort of knowledge of that, when football started up, so in the Industrial Revolution, when it was very much a working class sport, it was as much a women's game as a men's game. Yeah. But there was something seen as somewhat distasteful about women playing the sport. Yeah. So they were barred from playing in the same way as they were barred from playing cricket and other sports.
After because from what I read, during the Second World War, when the men were away and the factories had their own teams back home, they had women play as well, because just like anything, women had to go and do it.
So in the Second World War, when the men's football league shut down, and because the men went to fight,
exactly.
But women's teams were formed so that those who were still at home could go and watch football.
Yes, exactly.
So there were, for a small amount of time, there was a women's football league then.
And it's a bit sad, actually, that it seems that every time there's a shortage of men, women are used, So here are the factories, we really need you, we recruit you, we love you, you can do this, come in and do the work. And then, the men came back from the war. Yeah. Now we have all of these shiny appliances for you to work at home, so please leave.
Yeah,
and the same
absolutely.
thing with football, And then we look down on women's football football, but back then we needed them, so we let them play.
Yeah, it is
good.
bad. It is bad. Yeah, a lot of interesting links between social history and the history of football. I mean, you can go back, to the very, very early days to look at where football first happened. But those references don't make that much sense to me because it wasn't football as I sort of understand
it wasn't really football. It was, that was a long time ago, and the material was different, the laws were different, everything else was different.
But when football became, modern football, if you like, the football that we
know today,
So really from the beginning, about the beginning of the 20th century, so 1900 onwards, an organised football
I think it started maybe in the 80s, like 1880s.
Yeah.
I think that's when it actually started.
Yeah. So the final step in the development of football, having been fairly well or badly organised, so it came out of the public school system, so Eton, Harrow, Westminster, Charterhouse, these kind of schools. And it was seen as an activity for disciplining boys. Because it was so violent.
Yeah.
So you just chuck them on a pitch and they all scrap with each other and play football.
And let their aggression come out on the field.
So the first real football teams came out of those public schools. So the Wanderers, sounds like a posh team, were the first winners of the FA Cup. And their social makeup was Harrow, graduates from Harrow and Old Etonians and Westminster School, Charterhouse School, Oxford and Cambridge universities. So football was at that point a game for the ruling classes.
Yeah.
We don't really think about it as a ruling classes game.
Not
it's a
anymore.
working game.
Yeah.
So something happened, and that the challenge came from the northern industrial towns because they started to play the game.
And they started to really invest in buying good players, and they came from working class, and that's how they kind of dominated the game.
Right, so people would be hired to work in a factory so they could play for the football team.
Exactly.
So, and the first really big football team was Blackburn Olympic or Blackburn Rovers, two teams from Blackburn, part of the cotton capital of Britain, who challenged the public school ownership of the game. And then from then, as you said, 1870s, 1880s, it became a socially organised sport, developing rapidly in the working parts of the North and the Midlands of Britain. So the first clubs were in all of those sort of northern towns. And then it developed significantly since then. But it was really very much a workers' game.
Yeah.
People playing it and the people watching it. And it was cheap, and you went and you stood on the terraces, watched your team, you put on your scarf. And that's where it all kind of started from. And now most of the clubs that play, certainly in the UK, have a heritage where they've been in existence for at least 100 years, some more. And families who supported them more than 100 years ago, their families still support them now.
Yeah.
But with the commercialisation of the game, like I said before, that sort of working man's ownership of the game is gradually being relinquished. Because a working man now cannot afford... I mean, if you're a working man with two sons and you want to take them to the game, that's going to cost you 500 quid a game. Because the ticket prices are ridiculous.
Because the demand is increasing and the stadiums are, they're getting bigger, but they're still not big enough to accommodate the huge amount of following. Yeah. So I can totally imagine.
And if you want to watch it at home, it used to be that everybody got to watch the football on the television, but now you have to subscribe to
Sky or something, to be able to watch it. Yeah. Well, can I tell you something? So about football, I'm quite torn about it because I feel like it's a massive waste of time sometimes because...
What?
I'm sorry, but there are people who just are obsessed with it and this is their main thing in life. And sometimes it makes me wonder, is this something that is part of the bigger scheme to keep people busy? And some of this idea came to me actually when I was... I still teach 1984.
It is a bit like that, isn't it? Yes.
It is. And in 1984, George Orwell says, when he's describing the proles and how the proles are being seen as cattle and how they can never have the power to overthrow the government or anything like that because they don't have the mental or intellectual power to do anything. And they are always distracted by porn, horoscopes, gambling, and football. That's what he says. It says he says football, beer, and above all gambling filled up the horizon of their minds. To keep them in control was not difficult. So it's really interesting how, it could be part of a scheme to keep people kind of busy and away from the bigger things like, politics and who's ruling us and who's doing all of this. And it's a bit worrying. We have to be careful.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think football's probably less so than it was because I don't think as many people are as fanatical about it as perhaps they were.
Yeah.
I think when I was a kid watching football, that was probably the pinnacle of that fandom. And now I do think, I say with the commercialisation of the game, the ability to travel more, you've now got the soccer tourist. So if you look at the crowd at Manchester United, you do have your diehard supporters, but you also have a large number of people who've travelled to experience being at Manchester United, and also a large amount who are there on corporate hospitality packages, and it's gone over into the sort of wealthy part of the game. I think if there is that sort of slightly sinister aspect or control aspect, I think football is just another one of those. It's the same as the fashion industry, or
it's a distraction for the masses, to not be aware.
Where things are owned by the uber wealthy, then they must be owning it for a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is to either extort money from people or to retain control.
Exactly.
Maybe.
So, have you got anything else to read to us?
I was going to tell you about Shakespeare.
Yes, yes.
Because I just jokingly, I thought,
Let's see. I'm sure Shakespeare has never written anything about football, but lo and behold.
Let's see about Shakespeare. But there is a rumour around the internet, not proven, but that Shakespeare actually invented the word football.
No.
Yeah. But he certainly mentions football.
Okay.
So, just very briefly, football during Shakespeare's time did exist. And it is quite likely that as a schoolboy, he may have been involved in that sort of rough and tumble game in the streets with his mates from school. It wasn't organised, there were very few rules, and it was just an opportunity really for people to fight over a ball. In the same way as people have these funny games where they fight over a big cheese, those kind of...
like rolling the cheese down the hill.
I think football was really more like that.
I see.
And I don't think it was just kicked, it was probably thrown and whatever. But there are two references to football in Shakespeare's plays.
Exciting.
In King Lear, Kent refers to Oswald as a base football player, likening him to a lowlife. So to be referred to as a base football player...
The lowest of the low.
Was the lowest of the low.
Okay.
You're the person who's out there fighting in the streets over a football. And in the Comedy of Errors, Dromio asks Adriana, "Am I so round with you as you with me, that like a football you do spurn me thus?"
Oh, wow.
So wondering why she's metaphorically kicking him around like a
football.
Like a football. So there we are. We could have... Shakespeare with his... I'm sure he was a Manchester United supporter.
I am sure,
Actually, no, he was... Stratford don't have a football club, but there you go. So, Shakespeare refers to football.
What about the Bible?
Well, apparently the 12 disciples, one of them was a substitute, that was Judas. And the reason why he wasn't getting a game.
Yeah, so he went and betrayed everyone. Betrayed Jesus.
And God was playing three at the back.
Yeah.
The Holy Trinity.
Yeah.
And Jesus was in goals because Jesus saves.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so...
no, nothing. But
no.
Stoicism I thought I'd do a little bit of research and see what Stoicism says about
Competitive sports or about football?
Well, about, is it okay as a Stoic to be like, I'd like to say that I'm a little bit Stoic.
But you're a die-hard fan as well. So.
But a Stoic doesn't fall off the sofa and scream and get in the car and beat the horn around the town for an hour when the team wins. It's not a very Stoic response, is it? Is it okay? But actually, Stoicism does make some reference to supporting teams. Mm-hmm. So Marcus Aurelius says, "From my governor, I learnt to be neither of the green nor of the blue party at the games in the circus, nor a partisan either of the Pamularius or the Scutarius at the gladiators' fights. From him too I learned endurance of labour, and to want little, and to work with my own hands, and not to meddle with other people's affairs, and not to be ready to listen to slander." So the equivalent of football was the gladiatorial sports and games. And it was not a Stoic thing to be an ardent supporter.
Okay.
It was basically to say, it's just a game.
It's just a game, and don't get too involved and don't get too emotional.
By all means, try your best.
Yeah.
But don't lose sleep over it, and see your failure as somebody else's success, and therefore have joy for them.
Yeah.
So I think that's
very reasonable.
So I think if you're a Stoic and a Manchester United supporter, that is quite challenging.
Yes, exactly.
How do you, could I honestly, like if I watch England next weekend in our quarter-final game and we lose, could I honestly at the end of the game say, well, the better team did win on the night and it must be great for them?
Yeah, exactly.
Or...
I doubt that.
No.
I can't see that happening.
Do you know what? I wouldn't want it to either.
Yeah.
Because I think part of the enjoyment of football is those roller coaster rides.
Exactly. And you need that release somehow. I mean, you're always so level-headed. We need to see you let go.
Honestly, I have been at football games shouting all sorts of abuse at the referee, chanting with the support,
I'd love to see that.
And you come out of the game hoarse, you can hardly speak, and you feel a little bit embarrassed.
Do you?
You do. Did I really sing that? Yeah, I've sung some terrible things in my time. Football chants are hilarious, but often not very
inappropriate.
Acceptable. Yeah.
But can I sing you one, actually?
Yeah, go on.
So
only if you sing it.
I'll sing it.
Okay.
So I was reading about the Mohammad Salah effect, actually.
Yeah.
Because Mohammad Salah is from Egypt, as everybody knows, and he is...
Great footballer.
He's a hero in the Middle East, especially in Egypt. They adore him. Mainly because of what I said about the underdog. You're coming from a country like Egypt that is struggling somehow, and you are making a name for yourself and for your country and for your religion.
Yeah.
So it's like he is known to be a devout Muslim, and he's kind of the best representation of Islam. He's a good guy, he has a good family, He's not, somebody that, you see all these footballers going around having girlfriends and mistresses and all of that. He's none of that. He's just a good, jovial guy, a great player.
I mean, I find it amazing, just as an aside about him, that when he comes to him having to fast, that it usually corresponds to...
He plays at that caliber while fasting, yeah.
Having to have was there a particular time of the day when after which you sunset. So if he's playing in a game and it gets dark during the game,
then he goes and drinks something.
He can go and have a drink and have something to eat. Just absolutely amazing.
And it's really amazing because the Mohammad Salah effect is actually that hate crime has decreased significantly in Liverpool since he has joined, and it's really amazing. The tweets have become better. Hate crime against Muslims has gone down considerably, and so it's really, really amazing. And there are two chants that I found. I'm going to read you one and sing you one. Yeah. So the first one is, if he scores another few, then I'll be Muslim too. If he's good enough for you, he's good enough for me. Sitting in a mosque, that's where I want to be. Have you heard that before?
Yeah, that's very much a Liverpool sense of humour.
And it's amazing to see these young, burly men in their Liverpool accent singing a song like that.
A song and celebrating his religion.
So cool. It was really amazing. I only discovered this when I was doing the research.
Yeah.
The other one is the melody of it is one of my favorite songs, You Are My Sunshine.
Yeah.
And so it goes like this. Mohammad Salah, a gift from Allah. He came from Roma to Liverpool. He's always scoring. It's almost boring. So please don't take Mohammad away. How cool is that?
And then he'll go, na, 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 na. Yeah. Well, there's two things. One is it's really cool, and I really admire him and what he's done in the game, but he does play for Liverpool.
So you can't like him, can you?
It's a bit like with the discussion about cats.
Yeah.
As far as Muslim footballers go, he's my favourite, but he does play for Liverpool, so that immediately means I can't like him.
Come on, but you do appreciate your adversary sometimes, right? You do have to take off your hat and say, well done.
My favourite Muslim footballer is a guy called Sadio Mane.
Oh.
Who also actually for a while played at Liverpool.
Okay.
But he also played here in Germany for Bayern Munich, and I think he played also in...
where was he from? Iraq?
Senegal.
Senegal, okay.
But what I like about him, I mean, again, played football at the very highest level, but whereas a lot of football stars, it's all about the bling and all about showing off their wealth. So he has, throughout his career, constantly spent large amounts of his football wealth on his community back in Senegal. So 2019, he donated £250,000 to build a school in his hometown of Bambali in Senegal.
Awesome.
March 2020, the next year, he donated to COVID-19 in Senegal. The next year, he donated £500,000 towards the construction of a hospital in that town. He financed the building of a petrol station and the post office in his local community, supplied the school with free laptops and internet for the village. In total that year, he spent more than £700,000 on those upgrades. He also commissioned a $70 a month stipend to every family in his 2,000-person hometown,
wow.
which is the equivalent to a month's wage for a Senegalese citizen on a minimum
amazing.
wage. He paid everybody in the town a wage just for being there. He's the ambassador for Right to Play, an international not-for-profit with a mission to empower vulnerable children. He's also collaborated with non-profit organisations to provide equality and empowerment to young girls and women in Senegal. So I love the fact that, I think the story goes that whilst other players were turning up at the training ground in their, huge, very expensive cars, he would turn up in just a normal car. He didn't really show off his wealth.
And I'm sure he had more than enough to live a very comfortable life.
I'm sure he did.
But he didn't have to flash it, and he didn't have to...
He certainly didn't. I think he felt embarrassed, given where he'd come from.
Exactly.
So, yeah, good for him, really.
Absolutely. And I think Mohammad Salah, I know that Mohammad Salah has his own charity as well. I think he supports cancer research, but I'm not 100% sure. But he definitely is also very big on charity.
I do think sports stars in general, but particularly football, where there's such a big impact on young people, I do think footballers have a responsibility to be role models on the pitch in terms of their behaviour,
sportsmanship,
but off the pitch, especially when they are earning such big sums of money, to be showing people what is responsible use of that money.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot don't, unfortunately.
No, unfortunately not. It's really sad actually, because some of them have so much money they could bail out their whole country. Yeah. They have the budget for the whole country. But
absolutely.
Can we also have a shout out to Kevin Danzo, who was a student at ISA? I just thought about that. I was watching the game reluctantly because I was on my laptop and my son was watching, and then all of a sudden I see this guy on the pitch and I'm like, is that Kevin Danzo? And Sammy's I think his name is Danzo. I'm like, he used to go to our school.
Yeah, fullback with the Australian team. He was the guy who broke Mbappe's nose.
I know.
He did get some sort of fame, possibly for the wrong reason. But
I don't want him to be famous for that. He was a good person. He's a he was an amazing student, not in terms of academics, because he didn't have time, but he was such a really cordial guy. He was always smiling, very polite, really lovely to have.
Well, in my previous school, we had a lot of students who were part of the youth setup of the local professional football team. And I always used to, the success rate is so low.
Yeah.
And you see those boys in their teens with such high hopes for the life that they're going to have.
That they kind of neglect school and everything else.
Yeah, because quite right, they're full tilt on training and make a good impression.
Yeah.
And then only a very, very small percent actually make the transition.
Yeah.
And of those, only an even smaller amount make the transition to a top club. And Kevin Danzo is at a almost top club. He is at a top club, and he's touted for a transfer to the English Premier League this summer. So that will be good.
I'll be following his career trajectory. Yeah. Have you got anything for us to finish with before we go?
Yeah, I finished with a poem. I said about having a tattoo. So, if I was to say to somebody, if they wanted me to prove that I loved them, it would be like, do you love me more than Manchester United, Tony?
I know which poem you're going to read now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's true.
Yeah.
If anybody said, Tony, do you love me more? Do you love your children? Do you love your children more than Manchester United?
Yeah. And you're like,
the very point that I'm thinking about it, because Man United, like in my DNA, it's part of my life. It's a relationship that can never be broken. So to be even in the equation, you must be a special person. Yeah. So I found a poem by somebody called Gab Ozo called The Beautiful Game. And it just made me smile because I thought, gosh, whoever this is, she must be special if he loves you that way. So it says, I love you more than my old soccer cleats, the ones I'll never give up. I love you more than the perfect field, the one I used to warm up. I love you more than my soccer ball, the one that's perfect for amazing passes. I love you more than me running along those different types of grasses. I love you more than the cheering crowds, the stands made out of plaster. I love you more than that perfect kick that I have yet to master. I love you more than my soccer cleats, the ones that hold all reason. I love you more than my coach, my soccer team, and my season. I love you more than winning that World Cup that we've yet to reclaim. I can't believe I love you more than the beautiful game.
Aww.
Of course, that's just not true, is it?
It is.
Oh, is it?
Of course it is.
People have honestly cancelled weddings.
For football games.
Yeah, there's a joke going around with the Scotland supporters because they're mad. I'm the best. I've got a ticket for the Scotland versus Germany game on June the 1st, but it clashes with my my brother's wedding. So I've got a spare ticket if anybody wants it. The wedding is in And another time I went to a concert in Germany during the European Championships, and it was sold out, the concert, but it clashed with the night when Germany were playing against Italy, which was unknown when the concert was announced.
Of course,
And when I turned up, there was about 6 of us there in the auditorium because everybody else stayed at home to watch football.
It's really funny. The same thing happened to me this weekend because I went also to watch, to a concert. It was Carmina Burana.
Yeah.
And I really loved that.
Who were they
piece.
playing against?
And it was a great concert. And they did say at the very beginning, it's such a shame that many people didn't make it today because when we planned this, didn't know that the game, Germany against, who was it? Who played on Saturday?
Germany beat somebody.
I can't remember who it was.
I can't remember.
And so
Denmark.
Some people Denmark. Yeah. And some people didn't show up because of the game. So,
but that just shows you how important it is.
Definitely,
that
very
other
important.
things get cancelled because of the football. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Bailey, I'm really glad that you didn't cancel our podcast for any reason.
But I've got to go. I've got to do a bit of pre-match warm-up now.
All righty.
Yes, and I'm glad we didn't get too much. I mean, there's so much rivalry in football that we could have got drawn into which club's better than the other.
I was going to ask you some
so
questions, some technical questions about football, but unfortunately our time didn't allow for it.
The biggest and best, obviously, Manchester United, for anybody who's still unsure
Of course.
about where your allegiance should lie.
Okay.
This podcast recommends.
Is that Manchester
that
City
team.
or Manchester City? Okay.
Gosh.
I'll see you next week about something less sensitive. How about that?
Less sensitive.
Well, you won't feel so emotionally attached to it.
That's pretty well every other topic, isn't it? Yeah. Good.
Exactly.
Well done. And see you next week.
We'll see you guys next week.
Bye. We hope that you've enjoyed listening to the readings we chose for you today.
And that our musings have ignited your thoughts.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and those you think would enjoy it.
If you have any thoughts, suggestions, or any kind of feedback, please send us an email using the email in the show notes.
We'd love to hear from you with the words that make you.